Parsha, Rivka Imenu is pregnant, and she's told, Shnei goyim, v'bitnech shnei le'umim, mime'ayich yiparedu. Shnei le'umim. What does le'umim mean? So Rashi says, Ein le'um ela Malchus. There's two kingdoms, two royalties, two kingdoms that they're going to be born from you, Rivka. We're talking about two kingdoms. One is Yaakov, and one is Esav. So it means there's one real kingdom, there's one kingdom, one Malchus, a Kedusha, and then the other Malchus is the Malchus that's the Zer Lo Mazeh, that's the fake Malchus, that's undermining the Malchus of Kedusha. Yaakov and Yaakov is the Kedusha, and Esav is trying to do the same thing to undermine the Kedusha. What does Malchus of Kedusha mean, and what is the opposite? So when we think of what Malchus means, what does Malchus mean? What is Malchus? So we mekabel Hashem's Malchus every day when we recite Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And when we say Shema, we mekabel on ourselves Malchus Shema El Malchus Shemayim. What is that? So when we say the word Echad, we're mekabel that we're going to bring Hashem from the loftiest place, the Aleph, the Alufa Shel Olam, all the way down the Ches, as is brought in Shulchan Aruch, the seven heavens and the earth and the four corners of the world, the Malchus. In other words, the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where Makabel means that we're bringing Hashem from the loftiest place all the way down to this world, to this mundane world, and this is the Malchus. In other words, that the Ikka Malchus that we are busy with is bringing the loftiness of Hashem's Malchus down to this world, meaning to impact us into every walk of life, everything we're doing in this world. That's Emes Malchus. A person living a heavenly life and bringing the heavenly life down to his practical, to his physical life down here, that is Malchus. And that's what we learn out from the Pasuk of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And that is why there's two parashas of Shema. And the second parasha of Shema, the last words of the last words of Shema, of the two parashas of Shema, are the words Kimei Hashemayim Al Haaretz, meaning that is Shema. Kimei Hashemayim. You're going to take heavenly days and you're going to bring them down to Haaretz. It's no good if a person is very spiritual when he's here behind the curtain of the Beis Medrash and he's learning great and he's into big moichin, he understands, he's toiling in Torah, it's the best thing Talmud Torah can get kolim. But we know the Gemara says in Kedushin that Godel Talmud Shemei Vilidei Maisa. In other words, you got to, from Malchus, if you want to be Makabel Malchus Shemayim, the learning has to impact you. The learning has to refine you, has to impact you, and you have to see your learning in every action. That's called Malchus. That's called Malchus Shemayim, because we know Malchuscha, Malchus Kol Elamim. Malchus cannot be halfway. There's no such thing as a half a Malchus. There's no such thing as a Malchus from my head down to half my body. There's no such thing. A Malchus has to be everything, all encompassing. And the Ikka Malchus of Hashem is carried out by Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael are the Ikka, are fulfilling Hashem's Malchus, revealing Hashem's Malchus down here, and that's the Ikka Avodah. That's why after Kimei Hashemayim Al Haaretz we go to the next parasha, which isn't really a parasha of Shema, but we say it together with the parasha of Shema, which is the parasha of Tzitzis. And the parasha of Tzitzis is the parasha of Tcheles. And Tcheles is Doim El Rakiyas, is the Gemara. And it's Doim to the Yam, to the ocean, and the ocean to the sky, and the sky is to the Kisah Kovet. So what does Tcheles do? Tcheles connects everything we're doing down here up to Shemayim. So that's exactly directly connected to the whole idea of Shema and the whole idea of Kimei Hashemayim Al Haaretz, because Tcheles makes that connection. And therefore, wherever you are in the world, four corners of the world, four corners of a talus, there's a thread of Tcheles to remind you that wherever you are, we have to bring the Kisei HaKoveh down here. We have to bring Hashem's Malchus down here to this world. And this is the main avodah of a neshama coming down to this world, to bring all the lofty insights and all the loftiness that he had in the Oitzar and neshamas, and to bring them down and unload them in this world and make this world into a Malchus of Hashem. Godel Talmud Shmei V'Ledei Maisa. That's why it says that the Melech that we talk about a lot is Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech is Lashon Shleimus, Shalom, because he made Shalom between the two worlds. The Pasuk says, Vayoshav Shlomo al Kisei Hashem. Shlomo HaMelech sat on the heavenly throne. What does it mean he sat on the heavenly throne? Asks the Gemara. Chazal answer, Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu moilech b'elyonim of tachtonim. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is obviously ruling over the upper worlds and the lower worlds, so too Shlomo HaMelech ruled over the elyonim and the tachtonim. What does it mean he ruled over the elyonim and tachtonim? Means that Shlomo HaMelech made this chibur, made this connection. On one hand, he was so lofty in Chochmah. On the other hand, he brought it all down to practicality. Who is Masak in the mitzvah of Natilas Yadayim? Shlomo HaMelech. It's Natilas Yadayim means my physical action, my actions. So on one hand, he was the loftiest in Chochmah. Chochmah is the head. Chochmah is the top. And nevertheless, he brought it all down into the practical world. That's Shlomo HaMelech. That's what it means that he sat on the Kisei Hashem. Kisei Hashem means you have to be moilech on your elyonim, your moyach, your head, and your tachtoinim. You have to moyach on everything you do down this world must be connected to your moyach. Your moyach has to govern your actions so that you should see Hashem's Malchus in all the worlds that we're busy with. That is the idea of Shlomo HaMelech. That is the idea of Malchus. And that was the idea of the Beis HaMikdash. And that's why Shlomo HaMelech, he built the Beis HaMikdash. Because the Beis HaMikdash, we say every day in the Shir Sayam, Mikdash Hashem, Kainanu Yodecha. Hashem, there's two hands over here. Kainanu Yodecha. Chazal say Hashem created Shemayim with his right hand, Kaviyachol, and he created Oretz with his left hand, and Mikdash Hashem, Kainanu Yodecha. When the hands of Hashem are together, it means that the Beis HaMikdash was a mokim of chibur of Shemayim and Oretz. And that was the whole avodah on the Beis HaMikdash. The whole avodah Beis HaMikdash running up the ramp is an avodah of running up and down to Shemayim. As we always quote the Balaturim that says the Kohanim running up the ramp was the dream of Yaakov Avinu going up to Shemayim, Sulam Mutzav Atzav Roshim Agia Shemayim Oilim Yordim. So the Kohanim are compared to angels. The pasuk says, Ki Sifse Kohen Yishmu Das Torah Bakshim Piyu Ki Malach Hashem Tzvokas. Kohanim are angels. Why Kohanim angels? Because they're serving down here in the Beis HaMikdash, but they're doing a heavenly avodah. Their avodah is a heavenly avodah, but it's a heavenly avodah that's down here in this world. That's what the Beis HaMikdash is. The Beis HaMikdash is the chibur, and that's why the Beis HaMikdash is the Malchus, and that's why the only one who's allowed to sit down in the Azor, the only one who's allowed to sit in the Beis HaMikdash, not the Kohen, not the Kohen Gadol, rather just the king. Ein yeshiva bazar ela malchus beis David bilvat. Only a king sits down. Why? Because the Beis HaMikdash is kingship. The Beis HaMikdash is kingdom. Why is it kingdom? Because the Beis HaMikdash is the place that brings the loftiest avodah down from up there, the avodah of the malachim, but he brings the avodah down here to this world. So that is Malchus. If that's Malchus, then who builds the Beis HaMikdash? The king. Who sits down in Azara? The king. Because this is Malchus. And that's the side of a king who has a crown. Not going into the Seder of the Esespheres over here, but we know that the Keser is the highest of the highest, and we know the Malchus is the lowest of the lowest. The Malchus is the lowest of the Esespheres, and the Keser is the highest. It's a Machloikas amongst the Kabbalah B'chlal. If it's one of the Esespheres, it might be even high. Keser B'kitza is very high, it's the loftiest, and Malchus is the lowest. So how come it's the king that wears the crown? What's the king doing wearing the crown? How does he climb all the way up to wear a crown? The idea is, that's Malchus. When the king wears his crown, he has to realize that he has to bring down from the highest place all the way down to Malchus, which is the lowest place. When the king puts the crown on his head, he has to have kavanah that I'm going to bring down everything that's higher, everything that a human brain and human mind can comprehend, the highest levels and the highest madrigas of Torah, highest levels of avodah, and I'm going to bring it down all the way down to practical. Malchus means to practical Malchus. That's what it means when a king wears a crown. A keser, he's going to bring it all the way down to his akev, all the way down to his, that's what we know by David HaMelech, Raglai Malichas Oisi. David HaMelech, we talk about David HaMelech as Raglaim. He is the regal Revi of the Merkava. He talks about the idea that Raglai Malichas Oisi, his madre goes in the Raglaim, because the Melech's going to bring something all the way down from the top, all the way down to the Raglaim, meaning he's going to bring it down to practicality, down here in this world. When did the Jews reach this lofty madrega of Malchus? When they stood at the Har Sinai. When we said Naaseh and Ishmael, the Malachim came down and put crowns on our head. In other words, we're ready to take the loftiest of madregas and bring it all the way down. And for that Hashem spoke to them. There was Aseres HaDibros. Aseres HaDibros has 620 letters. 620 is the gematria Keser, and it has 172 words. 172 is gematria Akev. Akev means the heels, the bottom, and so it's the Keser and the Akev. That's what Hashem spoke to them. 620 letters from gematria Keser, 172 words gematria Akev, and that was what happened. That's why Hashem put crowns on her head. You're about to hear Aseres HaDibros. You're about to become Malchustik, you're about to become royal. What is the pasuk? V'atim tiuli mamleches kehanim v'goy kodesh. Mamleches kehanim. Mamleches Kohanim, because Kohanim worked in the Beis Hamikdash. That was the place of Malchus. Mamleches Kohanim. Mamleches Kohanim means that you are now fulfilling this avodah of bringing everything down and being mechaber, joining together the highest and the lowest together, which is what happened. Vayered Hashem al Hasinai, says Rashi there. The Yorad Kisei HaKovod. The Kisei HaKovod came down on Hasinai. Why did the Kisei HaKovod come down on Hasinai? Did Hashem need a chair? No, it means Kisei HaKovod means his throne, means the Malchus. Hashem said, now you're bringing the Malchus. Aleph is the Aleph of Anoichi. Aleph is letters Pele, Pele is Keser. Everything about it is Keser. You have to bring it down and alter, and that is the avodah. Yom Kippur, for example, is the avodah. Also, we go into Keser. Yom Kippur is the pasuk ki b'yom hazeh yechap aleichem v'tayischem lekol chateseichem lefnei Hashem titehoru. Titehoru is gematria Keser. Titehoru, and then straight after Yom Kippur, we go up to the darg of Keser, and then Sukkos we come down to the main avodah of Sukkos is our hands and our feet. We're shaking lulav and we're dancing with our feet, and it brings it down. Sukkos, the Gemara says, in Yom has more mitzvahs than any other chag. We bring it down to the Olam HaMitzvahs, we bring it down to Olam HaMaisa. What is the avoid of coming from Yom Kippur into Sukkot? It's a bit of an anticlimax. You're coming from a pachad of Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur down to Sukkot. Teretz says, no, this is Malchus. You climb into Keser, Titahor, you purify yourself. Titahor is Gematria Keser, and you bring that down into Sukkot. You bring that down to actuality. You bring that down. That's why Sukkot is a Yom Tov for the king, and that's why the mitzvah of Hakel after Shemitah on Sukkot, the king used to come and he reads the Torah, because that is a kingly, that is a princely avodah. That is why David HaMelech became king, and we know that David HaMelech began his Malchus in Hebron. Right? David HaMelech first was king in a few years in Hebron. Hebron is the Indian of Chibur. Chibur of high and all the low madrigas together. Rashi says, by Yosef Atzadik in two parashas, Rashi says that Yaakov Avinu sent Yosef Emek Hebron. Emek Hebron, Emek means it's a valley, it's low down. Emek, Rashi asks, you go down to Hebron, you go low to Hebron. Hebron's very high, Rashi asks. When the Meraglim went to spy the land of Israel, so it says that the Meraglim went up to Hebron. So here you're talking about Meraglim, here you're talking about Yosef going down to the Emek Hebron, there you're talking about climbing up to Hebron. Where's Hebron? Is it high, is it low? The Torah says that's why it's called Hebron. It's a chibur. It's a chibur of Shemaim v'Aretz. So David HaMelech had to become the king. If you have to become the king, you have to begin your Malchus in Hebron, because you have to have this chibur. And we are going into now, this is the first king was really Goliath. Shaul HaMelech. And Shaul HaMelech lost the Malchus. Why did he lose the Malchus? The Torah says you have to understand, and we spoke about the Malchus of Kedusha. The Malchus of Kedusha is you take it down from the high all the way down to the low. The Malchus of Kedusha, as we began tonight, is Shnei Le'umim, is the Malchus of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu's Malchus is the Malchus that goes all the way from the top to the bottom. Where do you see that in Yaakov Avinu's name? Because Yaakov is Yud Ekev. Yud is Chochmah, and on top of the Yud, there's a crown, there's Keser. The Ois Yud is Keser Chochmah, that's the highest Madrega. And what's the next letter? It's Ekev. Yaakov Avinu's Madrega is the Malchus. He takes it all the way down from the Yud, all the way down to the Ekev. But Esau Varosha is the Malchus, that's Amalek. Amalek is mafred in between. Amalek doesn't let this chibur take place. Amalek says, I'm the king over here. He made an agreement with Yaakov Avinu. You're spiritual, I'm physical. There's no chibur. Then we know that Amalek is all about breaking the chibur. There's a Yud K and there's Vav K. Yud K is the higher level, Vav K is the lower level. When Amalek's around, there's a period between a Yud K and the Vav K. Like the pasuk says in the last pasuk of B'Shalach, Ki Yod al Kes Ka. There's only Yud K around because there's Ein Kisei Shalom. The Kisei of Hashem, the throne of Hashem is not Shalom. Ad Shimach Zar Shal Amalek. You need to make Mechias Amalek, and that's why the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that there's three mitzvahs when you come into Eretz Yisrael. Mamish, and this binds everything, wraps everything up together. What we just said. One mitzvah is to appoint a king. The second mitzvah is to destroy Amalek, and the third mitzvah is to build a Beis Hamikdash. How do these things connect? First, you have to anoint a king. What does a king do? A king makes the chibur between Shema and Varetz, but you can't have a chibur when Amalek's around. Amalek is mafrid that chibur, so you have to destroy Amalek. Once you destroy Amalek, you create that chibur. Once you create that chibur, you build a Beis Hamikdash, which is the connection between Shema and Varetz. This was really Shaul HaMelech. This is really, again, we have no idea on the madrigas of Shaul HaMelech, but the person's got to be very careful when he learns Navi, because Shaul HaMelech, he can get the wrong picture. I had the schus to be very close to a tzaddik, one of the lamdim of tzaddikim, and he wrote a sefer called Shaul B'chir Hashem, where he talks about what a tzaddik Shaul is. I remember when I was in school, they were teaching us that Shaul HaMelech, he's this, and he has this psychological chas v'shalom, don't even want to say what they thought. But Shaul HaMelech, Shaul B'chir Hashem, Shaul HaMelech, the pasuk testifies that he was gavoya mikolam, he was mishichma ma'ala, or gavoya mikolam. In other words, he was very high. Shaul HaMelech had that chelik of roimemus. He had that chelik of loftiness. But what do you have to do with that chelik of loftiness? What do you have to do? You have to bring it down. How do you bring it down? Only through Mechias Amalek. If Amalek's around, you get stuck. You can't bring it down. Who was he supposed to kill? Agog. Who's Agog? Which nation? Amalek. He didn't kill Agog, so he got stuck halfway. So he remained Shichma Gavoya Mikol Am Shichma Gavoya Mikol. He raised the hand, but he couldn't bring it down. So in order to bring it down, you can't have a Shema Yisrael, you can't have an Echad, you can't have a Shema Yisrael with Amalek around it, and that's why he lost his Malchus. He was taka so great. He was taka Gavoya Mikol Am. He was taka Shichma Mala. Oh, but that's not enough. That's not Malchus. Malchus is to bring it down. You got to bring it all the way down to the Akef. You got to have Keser and you got to have Akef. That's the Aseret Divros. That's the whole Torah revolves around that. He didn't have that. David HaMelech, he began his career, so to speak, when he killed Goliath. Goliath was a giant. A giant means, he also makes a chibur. But Goliath was the clipper of the Tzad Kedusha. The Gemara says in Soita, the Gemara Dashins from the Pasuk, that Vayagish HaPlishti Hashkim Ve'erev. He used to come and destroy, he used to come and disturb in the morning and the afternoon. Hashkim in the morning, Be'erev in the evening. The Gemara in Soita, I think that Membei says, that the clipper of Goliath was, which mitzvah we mekayim Hashkim Ve'erev, which mitzvah we mekayim in the morning and at night? Shema. So he came, the Gemara says in Soita that he came to be Mevatel, Klal Yisrael Shema. It works very cool to say, because the whole meaning of Shema is Lamala Lamata, to bring to me Mechaber the two. And he was a giant that's inside a clipper. So David HaMelech killed him. It says that David HaMelech picked up 5 stones to kill him. And David HaMelech got him in his head, because he doesn't belong a head. And because how do you know? Because Amalek doesn't have a head. How do you know Amalek doesn't have a head? Because the father of Amalek is Esav. What happened to Esav's head? He rolled off. Why? Because he makes a period. He said, you don't make a chibah. If you don't make a chibah, so what do you need a head? The whole idea is to bring your head down to the thing. But you don't need a head or not. So David HaMelech picked up 5 stones. The Tikkun Zohar says in Tikkun Samach Beis, I think, he says those 5 stones that David HaMelech threw at Goliath, those 5 stones are connected Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem. In other words, he killed Goliath by bringing the or of Shema Yisrael down. So this is, and that's how really he was Zucker to his Malchus, because that is Malchus. That is what the whole inyan of Malchus is all about. So Mela, therefore, this is really also what's going on in the Yom Tov of Chanukah. The Yom Tov of Chanukah is the Shemen. The Shemen is the Chochmah. The Chochmah is Shemen Zai Zoch. It's a Shemen, the Pach Shemen was the Svarim say it is the Or and Hasogas of L'Asid Lova. It's the highest possible, the Pach Shemen, the Shemen Zai Zoch, the Ness of the Pach Shemen that they found was the highest level of Yichud between Hashem. The Megala Mukas writes that when Yaakov Avinu crossed the river in Pashas B'Shalach to retrieve jugs, so the Megala Mukas says that those jugs were the jugs of Shemen that were later going to be used for Chanukah. And Yaakov Avinu was Yaakov Levado. Yaakov Avinu reached the point the Medrash says, V'niskav Hashem Levado b'yom hahu. Yaakov Avinu reached that point. Now where's that? That's the Chanukah. That's the Pach Shemen of Chanukah. The Pach Shemen of Chanukah is the Oragonas. The Bnei Soschas Marach is the Oragonas. And what do we do with that? We take the Chanukah and we light a candle. Dafke lemata mi Yotfachim. Lower than Yotfachim means nothing. No day of the year can bring an or lower than 10 Tvachim. The Gemara in Zucker learns from the Kaparis and the Or, and even on Yom Kippur the Shechina only came down till 10 Tvachim. Because lower than 10 Tvachim is the Shechina doesn't come down. That's the boat of the Klipper, and the Shechina doesn't come down, which means the Malchus of Hashem is incomplete. It doesn't come down all the way. Torah Eretz Mikveidecha. It doesn't come down lower than 10 Tvachim, means the Malchus of Hashem is not complete. It's got to come all the way down. Chanukah is the only time of the year where you bring the Or, you bring the Pach Shemen, you bring the Vayivasa Yaakov Levadai, you bring the V'niskav Hashem Levadai b'yom hahu, you bring that Or, you bring that V'niskav Hashem, you bring it down lower than 10 Tvachim. That is Malchus. And that's why the Yevonah made a mistake. Not the Yevonah, Chashmonah made a mistake. What did they take which they weren't supposed to take? They were from Shevet Levi, and what did they take for themselves? The Malchus. Why did they take the Malchus? Because the world reached a level of Malchus that it's never reached before. That what? That it brought the Or, it brought the Niskav Hashem Levad, it brought the Shemen, it brought the Chochmah, all the way down to lower than 10 Tvachim, which is the greatest revelation of Malchus. They made that mistake. They brought the Malchus, and therefore they took the Malchus to themselves, which they weren't supposed to do. But that's the Yisoid of Yaakov Avinu. That's the Yisoid of Yaakov born in this world, in this week's parsha. And this is the Yisoid of Shnei L'Omim. The Esav is the one who's mafrid. He's trying the whole time to be mafrid, and he doesn't want to create the schibur. Again, not going into Barichus now, but that's the whole sod. But the Malach of Esav tackled Yaakov Avinu. So Yaakov Avinu was in a very high state. Vayivasa Yaakov Levada. Yaakov Avinu went up. So the Malach tries to challenge him that he shouldn't be able to be mechaber. A person from this world shouldn't be able to go so high. Okay, Yaakov showed him I can go so high. So now if I can't get Yaakov's head, then he crippled him. He tried to cripple his legs. In other words, you can't be b'shleimus. Either I'll get your head, either I'll get you on a high level. If I can't get so high, then I'll I'll break your legs. And then I'll get you low. But you can't be a kohen shlema. And that's why the pasuk testifies, Vayova Yaakov Shalem. Yaakov came to shlemus after he finished that. Shlemus is just like Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash. That's the inyan of shlemus. And that's really our avodah. Our avodah in the Ikas of the Mashiach, we are the Ekev now. We are the Ekev. We have a golden opportunity. Every person has a golden opportunity to bring the Malchus of Hashem to places that no other generation has ever brought it to. In other words, when a person is struggling, a person is fighting, Al-Dor is the door of fighting with the Yetzer Hara. And many people, especially Yeshiva Barcham, are mistaken to believe that the fighting with the Yetzer Hara, that's not part of my avodah Hashem. That's what I do out there. That's what I do in Nofay Alon. But in the Yeshiva is all Torah. That's my avodah Hashem. It's not true. The Yavon in the Milchama of Hanukkah, they went to fight. And when to fight, they put up a banner, Mil Hashem Elai. This is part of the Milchama. This is part of Malchus Shemaim. This is part of this Galus of Malchus Shemaim. Every challenge, there's challenges in this door that no other door has ever had. And those challenges are challenges which is Kol Kulei Malchus Shemaim. I think the Maranam brings he says that a king who has ministers in the palace and he has soldiers fighting thousands of miles away that have never seen the king before. Who's Megala, the Malchus of the king more? The one who arrives in the palace in the morning and sits with the king on the throne, or the loyal soldiers that are so far away from the king and they're fighting for the king? They are the Malchus. They are the Malchus. They are the Malchus. Not going into now, but that's the whole sod of the Levana, the moon. It's night. It's night. It's hest upon him. It's a small moon. It's a small R. But who has the army? Who has the army? Who has the stars? Who has the stars? Chazal say that because the moon became so small, so he has a beautiful army of stars. There's no army in the world that has so many soldiers like the moon. The moon's got all the stars. Why? Because when you go to a place of choshech and you fight in a place of choshech, and this time of Hesler, that's the biggest army. That's the Tzva Hashem. That's the biggest Malchus. And we know Peter Zohar says the moon is the Bechinas Malchus. The moon, the Esther is the Bechina. Esther is the Bechina Malchus. And that's, by the way, just to finish off, we jump from Chanukah to Purim for a second. But the inyan of Purim is the inyan also where there was a sign of Malchus. Achashverosh established his Malchus, Keshevas Hamelach Achashverosh al Kisei Malchusa, established the Malchus, which means this is now the Malchus. There's no chibur b'chlal to what's going on up there. No chibur to Beis HaMikdash. He stopped building the Beis HaMikdash. This is the Malchus. The Malchus is down here. That was Achashverosh was saying. The Malchus was down here. There's no chibur. There's no connection to anything up there. And therefore, that's why Gidl HaMelech Achashverosh is Haman, because Haman does that work for him. If you want to be mafrid, if you want to separate, if you want your Malchus to be just down here, not up there, you need to employ Amalek, because he's the one that actually makes that sever between up there and the down here. So Gidl HaMelech Achashverosh is Haman. So you see in the Megillah so many times that every time it says Melech, it really means down here, but it really means Melech Malach HaMlochim. And the Kimu v'Kiblu l'Malam, Masha Kiblu l'Mata. And Yem Alaylahu Nodot Shnas HaMelech, says the Medrash, the Melech down here and the Melech up there. The whole Megillah is basically a fraction. Everything down here is really mechuba to everything up there, and everything that's going on down here is mechuba to what's going on up there. That's Mamish Malchus, Malchus the Kedusha. And the story of Megillah Esther is being mavara the Malchus of Kedusha from the Malchus of Klippa. The Malchus of Klippa is it's either up there or it's down here. Malchus Shemaim belongs in Shemaim, not down here. And the Malchus of Kedusha is Malchus Shemaim is down here. Kimei HaShemaim al Haaretz, it is down here. And this is the Malchus, and this is our avodah because of Mashiach. This is the avodah of Chodesh Kislev. This is the avodah in the dark winter nights. There's so much opportunity, and a person learns Torah, the Hasmoda, and a person davens, and a person does Chesed, and a person everything he does, mamish from his roish, from his moichin during Seder, until he eats, until his ben adam l'chaver, until his Chesed, until his raglayim alichas v'yisi lebeis hamedrash in the morning, until he gets out of bed in the morning. Everything, the more he does, the more he's bringing a shleimus, a whole picture to the Malchus Shemaim. The Sephardim says that the three candles on the right correspond to the people who learn Torah all day long, and the candles on the left correspond to the candles on the left correspond to people working all day long. And it's all facing the middle. It's all facing the middle candle. It's all facing the middle candle, which means that the whole manner is miksha achas. That's how a Yid has to feel. Preparation for Chanukah, a Yid, every Jew is a miksha achas. Certain parts of your life, now Baruch Hashem, you're in yeshiva, the main focus is in your roish. The main focus is your yegia and your amela, you're learning Torah. But then there's in your tefillah, which is kol atzmoiseh tamarno. There's an Indian even revolving around Torah, how you come to the Beis HaMedrash. Like we said before, Ragla Medichas, so you see the whole Yom of Chanukah is Any Yom Tov of Shleimus is when you feel that you are Miksha Achas for Hashem. You don't feel the Melchama anymore. That's why before Chanukah the Melchama ended. The Melchama, the war, ended on the 24th, and on the 25th, that's when we begin Chanukah. Why? Because that's the Nakuda. And by the way, we said before that the Ikar Malchus is Shema Yisrael, and Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's 25 letters. 25 letters correspond to Chafei Kislev. It's what I'm saying, and that's the Inyan of the first day Chanukah after the Melchama. In other words, after the Melchama, a person has to train himself until even his legs want to go, until he's one mikshachas, until there's less fighting going on the country. He becomes slowly a mikshachas, and that's the emes of Malchus, where he feels so any limb are moving. That's why Krishna also has 248 words, because Krishna's Kabbalas al Malchus Shemayim. Kabbalas al Malchus Shemayim is when you bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu down to every single eva of your body, every limb of your body, and limb of the body is 248 limbs. That's Krishna. It's Malchus bring down for 248 limbs. So the Avodah is that each, the Shleimus is that each should reach a shalom within himself. A shalom within himself. It says, "V'haftas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrach," until you even the Yetzer Hara jumps on board. Everything jumps on board. And that's why straight after Shema, straight after the pasuk of Shema, the next pasuk is "V'hafta b'chol levavcha." What's real Malchus? Real Malchus is when you got two sides. You can't. There's not a Malchus. A Malchus has to be everybody's with the king. You can't have a kingdom where part of the people are with the king, part of you are not with the king. That's not a kingdom. A kingdom's got to be where everybody's with the king. So straight after Shema, even the Tzadarat, even the Shnei Tzrachah, even the Yetzer Hara is going to jump on. Even the Yetzer Hara is going to be. And this is the Shalom. This is the Shleimus. This is the Shalom. And that's why we know that Derech Klal in a house, candles is for Shalom Bayis. Neres Shabbos is for Shalom Bayis. Chanukah is a din in the Bayis. It's a din in the Shalom. It's a din in the Shleimus. It's a din in every person in his own Shleimus, in his own becoming a Miksha Achas of Kedusha, a Miksha Achas where he wants to do the Ratzon Hashem. And that's after a whole week of this struggle comes Shabbos, and Shabbos is Shabbos Shalom on Avodah. Shabbos is Taka B'Shleimus. Shabbos you get an Neshama Yisera, but then there's a Neshama Yisera, says Rashi Beitza, gives you additional capacity to eat a lot. So Shabbos, the Neshama on Shabbos lets you eat a lot. So Shabbos is a beautiful achtos going on. Usually the Guf and the Neshama don't get on so well, and on Shabbos they get on, and the Neshama is saying eat more. The Neshama tells Gishmak, it's such good food. It's Heilige Shabbos Macholim. Just eat more. There's this Shleimus. There's this Miksha Achas. Shabbos is a Miksha Achas. That's the inyan of Shleimus. That's the inyan of Shalom. And Shabbos is the 7th day of the week. And the 7th day of the week corresponds to the 7th midah. And the 7th midah is Malchus. Shabbos Malchus. Shabbos is Malchus. So when there's Malchus and there's Shalom. When there's Shalom, means it's all Miksha Achas. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us that we should be Zocher to a Lechtig Chodesh, and we should be Zocher Metz Hashem to bring the Malchus Shemaim down, and to be able to really feel the more places in his own life, in his own avodah he brings Hashem into, the more he's bringing Hashem's Malchus, the more shleimus it is. And this is this galus that has to happen. Metz Hashem Mashiach comes, David Malka Mashiach to bring. And that's why we said before that David HaMelech is raglaim or lichas oisi. David HaMelech had to bring Hashem all the way down to his raglaim, because this is the Akev. This is the Akev, and this is the Yaakov, the Yud and the Akev. We should be Zerchem Metz Hashem to the Gula Shleima Mitis Heirav Yameinu Amen.